Hi, I'm Xtian Reader, owner of Comics and More, and I'm here today with Maria Sweeney, who really released Brittle Joints just last year. Hi, Maria.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. I loved the book. Uh, could you tell me about some of the production process or creation process
Mm,
you went through?
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. So, in regards to just like from start to end, the whole project took close to about 10 years, close to about a decade, which because some of the work that's in it is from my time in college, which was over a decade ago at this point, and then also just in terms of how long it takes to uh, self-publish your own work, which is how I started, and then getting picked up by an agent, and then getting picked up by a publisher. So that's sort of a very like large overview of like the major steps with all these things that happen in between. Most of the like iteration of Brittle Joints came from self-publishing it and then kind of peddling my goods at different comic festivals. A lot of things that you and I would show up at, because I can see so much indie work behind me, or behind you. I'm sorry, but it is behind me in another area. But yeah, just so much like of the independent, comic sphere. Uh, that's kind of where I originated my work in, and then yeah, I mentioned, getting picked up by an agent, Meg Thompson, really, really great. And then I had already known the publisher, but I had still been working on it in a self-published version. But once that had been done, I worked with my publisher, Liz, at Street Noise Books. And then we expanded it to something that would be like of a full book. So that took another 5 years, I would say. So yeah, and then in terms of it getting, released, that just happened last year. That happened last June, and so it's still been very fresh. It still feels very surreal. But yeah, that's the general process for
Wow.
me. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's different for a lot of different creators.
Do you does your process do you use any assistive devices, or how does your how does your process interact with your living experience as a disabled person?
Mm. So I love the combination of like a traditional look in a digital access tool. So using the iPad or a tablet, it's I think a lot of folks think of like an illustrator, an artist, and they're working in a studio and they have all this paint around them, and that certainly is really idyllic and very possible, and certainly is something that artists do. But for a lot of disabled folks, having the ability to set up that can take a lot of our battery, or in our community referred to as like spoons. You're right, I knew you would be familiar, but for others, it's just sort of like your battery, right? And so and also when you work traditionally for something that's going to be reproduced and published, you do need to work larger scale so that it's of a high resolution, and that in itself is very fatiguing. It's easier for mistakes to happen, which then requires more energy output. And I just found the process to be um, not conducive to, yeah, like my pain management, my fatigue levels. So working on an iPad, working digitally, but using technology to incorporate a traditional look is what's really helpful. So for example, I'm gonna break. So for example, sorry, he's old, he's 13 and he's old, and
What's his name?
his name is Milo, and he's my
Milo.
my partner's sweet dog, but he's pretty much mine now too. So, but he does need help because he's old. So he gets confused. But so in regards to like making it look traditional, what I was able to do is paint strokes with like in watercolor, and then scan that in, and then export it as a Photoshop brush, so that I'm able to use the still realistic painterly look that still is of my own hand, though there's nothing wrong with also downloading um, uh, presets that are already painterly from other
Mhm.
creators and artists, that's also fine. But doing it of my own strokes kind of made me feel in touch with the traditional elements that I love so much.
Yeah.
And then also, yeah, like in terms of accessibility, I think people, this isn't what I had thought of at first, but working with like a publisher or a team or an agent that is disability minded, because I had a lot of either health issues or housing or job insecurity issues that prevented me from getting the timeline I wanted on this project, which is very common for our community, and so many people in general, but especially, um, you know, in the disabled community, having those insecurities. Um, and so having people on my team that didn't ask me questions about what about when I was going to get it done, and just believed in that, and realized that that is an accommodation need. You know, having surgeries, having health issues that come up, that take you off your timeline and course, having that be met with understanding is an access tool that I think is overlooked. So
Yeah.
those are the ones that come to mind.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. In my experience, it's often like the more abstract things about accessibility that
Mm,
people in my life don't always like. No, it's that part too. Like, there's no parts where it doesn't include my every moment experience.
my
Like,
time, yeah, how I manage time, how that's a
mhm,
big part of the disability experience, how, yeah, how we access the same resources, is more laborious and expensive, for us, and so all of these things, yeah, make your creative projects on hold, and so that
mhm,
was, yeah, and as you said, having it's an abstract tool, that
yeah.
understanding.
Yes. Yeah, it it's really amazing when you can find it. And like I've thought about like other cartoonists who have had similar problems. Like when you were talking immediately, Emil Ferris's experience with Fantagraphics over the last couple of years and the
Mm,
lawsuit, and that they would bring up like her food stamps and stuff like that. And he was just like a guys, that's a monstrous thing to do. Like to this disabled cartoonist who's made you so much money.
so
Why
much
would
money.
you ever talk about them like this? And a lot of the story seems like, from what I could tell, is like there are a lot of complicated things that made that book go take longer. And it's an
Yeah.
amazing piece of work, but like I can only imagine how it could have been differently handled if there was consideration for like the person who was creating that work too.
But but that sounds so, like true and awful, right? If there's consideration for the people making you the money,
Right.
and that's why I really love like my publisher. No, I have so many titles from Fantagraphics that I
Me
adore and
too.
love.
Yeah. Oh,
So, and I
totally.
know we know that, like that's a given. But my publisher never questioned, Liz never questioned my ability to get the project done. And also, while it is different in the sense that Emil's work wasn't disability focused,
Right.
like my publisher, like, Liz knew when she took people on that she's going to have to accommodate for those things really without question, and that it's done, it's on shelves, right? That we
Right.
we certainly do mean what we say, and we're just as reliable, if we were given the same resources. So
Right.
yeah, that was incredibly heartbreaking. And it's hard to still not like see it on the website and know that she had such a struggle, with so much of her, yeah, her ability to be published.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Um. Yeah. You do children's books too, right?
Too. I just started I guess about a year and a half ago. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. I haven't gotten a chance to look at them yet. They're about two kids who use wheelchairs. Is that right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Could you tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about it? Like, it
I
sounds
would
really
love.
neat.
Yeah, I was sorry. Yeah, I would love to. And why it's so precious is for to me is because, though I would certainly love to write a book like that, I didn't write it. It wasn't even my idea. It is, I was hired to do the illustration portion, which is also kind of one of my favorite things, given I'm pretty tired from writing So that felt really good to just do something that was just about the art. Um, the writer, Dorothy Palmer, is a disabled adoptee, just like me. We're both adopted. And she wrote this book in tandem with a Canadian publisher, Anasi Press, and their sister, like, sub publisher, which is their children's book group, and that's Groundwood Books. And that, yeah, they reached out to me. Well, they had a call for specifically physically disabled illustrators, which is very niche, very unique. That's
But
not something.
nothing about us without us. That's
Exact,
very cool.
exact. Oh, exactly. Yeah, and you do not see that emulated a lot at all. And while I certainly there's a crossover between the mental disability and physical disability, the reality is this story is best told by somebody who uses a wheelchair.
Right.
And having that categorization really mattered, and it felt good to be thought of and seen in that way, even if I wasn't going to get the role, the role. But even if I wasn't going to get the job, I was like, well, somebody in my community that is experiencing being a wheelchair user is going to get it, because that's what they're asking for. And then, of course, I was very, very blessed that it was me. But beyond that, yeah, it's telling the story of these two kids getting their first mobility scooters. And I think I'm allowed to say, but I also did get approved for a sequel. So I'm helping work on the second one, which is really exciting. I'm very excited. And
Congratulations.
thank you. I'm very happy, because now it really feels like it solidifies. I am a children's book illustrator,
Heck
which is
yeah.
something I always wanted to be in. And I did do a lot of studies of that in college. So it's pretty much a little dream. It is a lot of work. It is a small, publisher, but I feel very, yeah, very proud of that. So that's. I hope it becomes a long series, but there's at least one out on shelves, and a second one has been contracted. So
That's so cool and exciting.
thank
Um,
you. Yeah.
we try to stock a lot of graphic medicine and disabled perspective books in the store because, as I may have mentioned before, I am disabled.
Mhm.
So like I try to find a lot of different like perspectives and narratives and different ways to see things, and like there's just so many fascinating books coming out right now. And I've kind of joked before that sometimes like graphic medicine is a hard sell around the holidays. That
So very
like,
true.
would you like a book about somebody who has to go to bed and then does not get back out of bed? Like, like
Literally.
they're a lot. They're doing okay, but that is what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
um but then like it's funny because like I don't think a lot of like I wasn't sad when I was reading Brittle Joints. I wasn't
Oh, that's
like
good to hear.
there was no feeling of like, oh, I'm so sad for, like that is not the vibe to it at
Mm,
all. Like there's no like I really appreciated how much it didn't feel like you were explaining yourself. It felt like you were
mm,
sharing, and like that really like resonated with me in it, because like it's one thing to like talk to people who don't know what the experience is like, and then it's another thing to talk to people who do know what the experience is like, but then there's like another one where people can pick up on context and like more
mm,
subtle storytelling and narrative devices where like like I constantly think of the strip where or the chapter, I guess, of you leaving your apartment to walk to your friend's house. And I've mentioned this in email to you before. And just depicting the to me what stood out was like the time passing, your thought process while being extreme having to be thoughtful in the way you move through the world, and then also having to be thoughtful about like, oh, here's a helpful man, oh good, um here to help me somehow, um
mm,
and just and then getting to your friend's house and them just being so happy that you are there,
mm,
not just another person joining the party. They
mm,
included
mm,
you, and like that really, like I really had to like sit with it for a moment, because I have had those feelings too before, where people who don't know made space for me, and it was such a it was like a moving thing to read, because like
Mm,
I it's so deeply personal, and like specific, but at the same time, like it it was like really personal and raw, and like it like, thank you for sharing it.
oh,
Like,
oh my gosh, thank you for saying that. That's one of my favorite ones. I think it really speaks to the strength of friendship and the strength of inclusion, and um, how valued that is in the disabled community, because our acceptance is can be so difficult for people somehow. And it's also this conflict of being like you accepting what, like being not wanting to accept crumbs, but also acknowledging like that your friends are doing something more special than just and that they are seeing. I think people mistaken good friendship with being like, oh, I don't see your disability. And
right.
great friendship is that they do see it. They
Yeah.
see it and they welcome it, and they love it, and they, yeah, as you said, they bring space to it, and it is not something that is shamed, right?
Right.
And that's one of my favorite ones. And I'm very close friends with those folks depicted there, and that is because of how they treated me then, 10 years
Right.
ago. You know,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it really struck me reading it, and like,
yeah.
just as like, also as like an example of disability disabled joy, like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
like, in that, to me, like, and I mentioned before, like, I brought your book to a book fair that I was vending at,
Um,
and like getting to talk to people about it, and being like, and the book fair was like very cool and intersectional and like masked up and stuff. And
yeah.
at the beginning of the day, they'd asked me like to talk about masking as community care, and I was pretty like stern about it. I like, like, I didn't go on or like try to be scary, but I
Well,
was like
firmly,
pretty stern. And
yeah.
then as soon as I got off from talking, I just got the rest of it, like, the mood had already been set. I didn't have to worry anymore. And like, then when I got to my table and started vending, I just got to tell people about stuff that inspires and like fills me with like joy and like wanting to do things. And like, all I brought were books about graphic medicine and social justice issues. And we did really well. And a lot of people were like very interested about brittle joints, and like, just it it's kind of like what I said a minute ago about like the holidays. Like, no, this person's experience is hard and probably not someone you're familiar with. Doesn't make it sad, and it doesn't make it
Mhm,
like
mhm,
grim or anything. Like,
mm.
I feel like in the early aughts, there are a lot of male cartoonists who I like a great deal, who made like kind of a career of being
The
misinformed.
sad. Yeah,
Yes.
I know it so well. Yes. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh Lord. Get out of here. The sad artist, you know? Hey.
Yeah. And I
So,
think it's an
mhm.
interesting contrast to like read work by folks, by disabled folks, who like superficially, when like looking at a book or like trying to tell a plot to someone, might sound heavy, but it's different. Like, it's just so
Yeah.
different. Of like, no, when I'm talking about my disability, I am not talking about how deeply lonely I like, or like how misanthropic. And if I am, I don't know, it's just very different.
It's funny that it's mostly disabled folks that have told me the book doesn't feel depressing or grim or sad, and it is able-bodied folks who have characterized it as certainly sadder, or that it was. And while I do believe there are moments of
Oh
like
yeah.
of pain or heartbreak, or certainly heartache, it is no, it's not a sad book. It's a statement
Right.
of joy, and it's hard not hard in a personal way, but it because I the pattern is clear, that, yeah, it is folks who are not in the disabled community yet, that think that my life is very sad or very hard, um, as opposed to that there are aspects of my life that are sad and hard. Um, and yeah, that is a pattern I've noticed, and it it falls in line. And I feel like when folks who are able-bodied have more experience with disability, they also could resonate differently with it.
I believe that. Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes
yeah,
sense. Like, yeah. Um, yeah, I've compared it really it struck me. I think I may have mentioned this to you before, but are you familiar with Pretending is Lying by
yeah,
Dominique Goblet?
yes.
It's one of my like it was like maybe the first graphic medicine book I came across, like just in that genre, and I was floored by it the first time I read it. Like, I don't have ocular migraines, so I wouldn't. So when I got to the
Mm,
pages that were all black with an aura, it
I
wasn't
do
until I
get them.
finished the book that I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I realized what I was looking at. And then I just reread it cover to
So
cover.
good. So good. Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Stunning. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I felt that way about a lot of books over the years, but like, that's one of my favorites. And there's not a lot of other books that I can really point to that I would compare to those two. What do you have any book recommendations or
Mhm. So I haven't been reading as much as I've wanted to these past year or two.
tough book
Um,
there?
but of the one is shout out to my publisher as well. But Karina Shore, her book, I always get it. I wrote it down so that I won't, because it's a unique. Okay, silence. Full stop. There we go. Okay. But she's also a Moldovan creator, like myself. We're both from the post-Soviet Union countries, which is between Ukraine and Romania. And so she wrote an entire graphic memoir about her life. It's not disability focused, but it certainly is identity focused, family focused, and then discusses her immigration to Tel Aviv. And yeah, which very unique situation in that. So I really enjoyed seeing her work, and her work is very vibrant. The book is all in color. There's a lot of shades of red. It's depicts more of her like youth as well, which my book only touches a bit on, and so it's different in that respect. But I read that last year, and that was really excellent. And then I had also read in the graphic medicine genre, which is Notes from My Sick Bed, or Notes from a Sick Bed by Tessa
Yeah.
Bruton. Uh-huh,
Mhm.
and which is she developed I think it's MFS, or some form of a very severe chronic fatigue syndrome. And yeah, kind of the story you mentioned of like the timeline, but certainly with so much nuance of like I was sick, or I wasn't sick and now I am. I wasn't in bed and now I am, and I haven't
Yeah.
gotten up. And but how horrific that has been, as well as the humor involved in like acquiring a disability, and sort of yeah, there's nothing humorous about a disability, but certainly about how you manage that and come to terms with that has moments of humility and humor. um,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Situational humor.
situation certainly, yeah. If I don't laugh, I'll cry, right? And
Right. Like,
that was
we're gonna have to do this one way or another.
exactly, yeah. The body needs what the body needs, and
Right.
so
Yeah.
I was really inspired by that. I really liked the way she approached that. It's also a disability, though I have fatigue. I'm not bedridden in that way at all.
Mhm.
So it is an experience that I don't have,
Right.
but is within my community, right? As we talked about, I have, fatigue, but yet I don't have what she has,
Right.
yet we are
Right.
also within the same category. And then one I had read a little further back, that is within the middle of the disability community, is Zidro's Blossoms in Autumn, which is a book. The story itself, I don't resonate too much with. It's about uh, two older folks and how they deal with their um, like aging and like dealing with desire and still being sexual as you become, old.
Mhm.
And while that isn't necessarily disability focused, it is in the sense that the
Right,
older folks are often disabled, and the
right.
intersection is unmistakable. And I just really, the art itself is watercolor, painted, very beautiful. And I've just really enjoyed the depiction of, elderly and
Mhm.
being desirable, and something that it intersects with how disabled people are not depicted with desire. And so I really connected with that as well. So, but then on top of that, I read like a lot of the local things that my friends put out. My friend October Stoner, that's their real name, and they are a stoner.
Awesome.
They're really great. They are in the Bay Area with me as well, and they put out a lot of comics and zines related to being a neurodivergent wheelchair user,
Whoa.
ambulatory wheelchair user, trans non-binary, and just a lot of things that are and as well as their art being impact like amazing, so engaging. So that's something on like a more local scene that I really enjoy as well.
Very cool. Yeah, I can I find them on Instagram?
Yes, I'll send it to you after so you can plug them.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely want to check that out. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Um, that's great. Cool. Where are we with things? Yeah. That's most of the questions I had.
You did so great. I
Yeah,
love
no,
that.
we knocked
Yeah.
it out of the park.
Yeah. No,
um,
I think I guess, yeah, I would say I would end this with mask up.
mask
Okay,
up.
there's a lot of things going around, and free Palestine. There's a lot of things that are not free Sudan.
That's
We
right.
have there's a lot more, but there's a lot of things that we could be using our voice on. There's a lot of things that like currently, like I'm not in LA, but like I have friends in LA. We have the wildfire season has sprung with like violence, and it's been really, really bad. And so, yeah, engaging
And
with
the
your
mask
community on a
seeing the
local.
mask block work being done in California over the last 4 days has been so stunning and like not surprising because like I do this work too. I know some of those organizers, so I'm not surprised that they stepped to this moment. But what a moment to step to! Like
Yeah, yeah.
I just and the way so many different groups are interacting and contributing and just I mean, for me, one of the most stunning parts is like I'm involved right now in fundraising for a big mask block, like buy, but where we bought it was from government surplus. So now in California, they had to ask the mask blocks for PPE because they don't have a stockpile anymore. So they're just getting us to pay for them and then extracting more value from us.
Oh my
The poor
gosh,
disabled
of
people.
course, of course.
Yeah,
Oh my
it's
gosh, yeah,
suddenly like click. And I mean, you
yeah.
bring up Free Palestine, the pistachio people, the people who own all those the water,
Oh
the
yes, yeah,
Resnicks. And
yeah.
pistachios are native, are historically native to Iran
Mm.
and Palestine, very like
Oh, I did not know that.
prolifically.
Yeah.
And what like countries have a lot of like things set up to like not be able to compete or could like contribute to like market and now the whole state's on fire. I don't know, it's like
Like, yeah, yeah, absolutely. The impact is profound, and it's like a mix of being so like uh passionate about engaging with your community and seeing what you can do on the ground level, and also feeling like so many of the things are out are I wouldn't say are out of our hands because that feels like giving up or defeating, but that the powers that be are so large, and that our tax money is not used for what we vote for and what we ask for. And so, yeah, I really appreciate the work that you and your comics community and the shop that you've cultivated do. Yeah, I'm really proud of our community for seeing the intersection, as you mentioned before at the book fair, the intersection of Palestine and the disability community. The fact that so many that Palestine, the war on Palestine, is a disability rights issue,
Yes,
and to not connect them is to turn a blind eye to our own community. You know,
I completely
um,
agree.
yeah.
Yes.
So thank you for this time and this
This
platform.
has been awesome,
And
Maria.
yeah, yeah, I'd love to
Thank you
chat with
so
you again,
much.
and I'll
Yeah,
keep you updated. Please keep me updated.
you bet.
Yeah,
This was so great. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
you too. Thank you.